On January 8, 1967, the 11-2-1 Kansas City Chiefs disposed of the Buffalo Bills in the AFL Championship game. On the same day, in a first-of-its-kind doubleheader, the 12-2 Green Bay Packers defeated the Dallas Cowboys 34-27 in the NFL Championship contest. The victors had a date for the first-ever AFL-NFL World Championship game, which would later become known as the Super Bowl. Super Bowl I, played January 15, 1967. Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, Los Angeles, California. Under a clear sky with 61,946 in attendance, the game pitted the Packers, the champions of the NFL, and the then-believed Superior League, against the AFL champs, the Chiefs, a 14-point underdog. To this day, the only Super Bowl ever to be simulcast by two networks, NBC, who had the rights to broadcast all AFL games, and CBS, who had the rights to all NFL games. CBS collected a slight majority in viewership, both networks charging $42,000 for a 30-second commercial. The Kansas City Chiefs, led by future Hall of Fame head coach Hank Stram, a fast-talking, charismatic, and innovative leader on both sides of the ball. Future Hall of Famers quarterback Len Dawson and linebacker Bobby Bell. The Green Bay Packers, motivated and inspired by future Hall of Fame head coach Vince Lombardi, and 10 other future Hall of Famers, including linebacker Ray Nitschke. Paul Hornung had missed the season due to injury and was an 11th Hall of Famer on the Packers roster. Each team provided their own football to use on the offensive side of the ball. The Chiefs used an official AFL ball, a Spalding J5V. The Packers, an official NFL ball, a Wilson known as the Duke. A combination of both leagues' officials officiated the contest, but was led by head referee Norm Scatcher. There was a lot at stake. $15,000 ahead to the winning team's players, and $7,500 to the losing team's players. Considerable pay, even in defeat. After each team punted on their opening possession, the Green Bay Packers capped off an 80-yard, 6-play drive on a 37-yard touchdown reception by Max McGee, a substitute wide receiver filling in for an injured starter, Boyd Doler, who was knocked out of the game earlier in that very drive. The ball was thrown slightly behind McGee, and in one of the most photogenic moments of the Super Bowl, he made a one-handed catch and easily made it into the end zone. Max McGee had only 4 receptions for 91 yards and a touchdown in the regular season, numbers that he would surpass in this single game. The Chiefs played hard and outgained the Packers by 15 yards when the halftime whistle blew. The score was 14-10, Packers. The halftime entertainment included Al Hirt on the trumpet, the marching bands of the University of Arizona and Grambling State, 300 pigeons, 10,000-plus balloons, and a flying demonstration by the hydrogen peroxide-propelled Bell rocket airmen. In the second half, however, the Green Bay Packers pulled away. Behind the rushing attempts of Jim Taylor and Elijah Pitts, the two backs combined rushed for over 100 yards on the day and 3 total touchdowns. Kansas City Chief quarterback Len Dawson finished the afternoon 16 of 27 for 211 yards through the air, 1 touchdown, and 1 costly interception. The Chiefs' top 3 running backs, all in the top 10 in rushing during the AFL regular season, couldn't reach a combined 50 yards on the ground. The Chiefs did not score a single point in the second half. Despite Max McGee's numbers, 7 receptions for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns, the Packers were ultimately led by quarterback Bart Starr. The game's MVP went 16 of 23 on pass attempts and 250 yards through the air. 2 touchdown passes and an interception, and the Green Bay Packers won the contest by a final score of 35-10. Vince Lombardi wins the AFL-NFL championship game, retroactively named the Super Bowl, and ultimately wins what will later be named after him, the Vince Lombardi Trophy. On December 31st, 1967, the 13-1 Oakland Raiders easily defeated the 9-4-1 Houston Oilers in bone-crushing fashion by a score of 40-7. On the same day, the 9-4-1 Green Bay Packers were able to freeze the 9-5 Dallas Cowboys in perhaps the most discussed American football game of all time, the Ice Bowl. The temperature at kickoff was -9 degrees, and by late in the fourth quarter, it had plummeted to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind chill factor made the air temperature absolutely inconceivable. In the single coldest game in NFL history, Lambeau Field's turf heaters malfunctioned, leading to sheets of ice forming on the field of play. Down 17-14, the Packers drove the icy field, and on third down from the Cowboy 1-yard line, quarterback Bart Starr snuck into the end zone with seconds left in the game, capping off a Packer win and one of the most dramatic finishes ever. The victors would play in the second annual AFL-NFL World Championship game, what would come to be known as Super Bowl II. Super Bowl II, played January 14th, 1968. The time, 3:05 Eastern. Location, the Orange Bowl in Miami, Florida. This week, the temperature, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, would not have an impact on the football game. With a partly cloudy sky and 75,546 in attendance, the game pitted the Packers, the champions of the NFL, and the then still believed Superior League, a 14-point favorite against the AFL champs, the Raiders. The game was broadcast solely by CBS, charging $54,000 for a 30-second commercial. The Green Bay Packers, winners of 3 straight NFL championship games, found themselves in familiar territory, reaching the World Championship game for the second year in a row, led by quarterback Bart Starr and head coach Vince Lombardi, widely considered to be recognized as one of the single greatest coaches of all time. The Oakland Raiders, led by former player John Rauch, a head coach, and reigning AFL Most Valuable Player Darryl LaMonica, who threw for over 3,000 yards and 30 touchdowns during the regular season. A combination of both leagues officiated the contest, but was led by AFL head referee Jack Vest. There was a lot at stake. The Packers were an aging group who had underachieved during the regular season and barely survived the Ice Bowl. Rumors had run rampant that this may be Coach Lombardi's final game, and on the other side was an ultra-successful 13-1 Raiders of the AFL and star quarterback, who were hungry for a first-ever World Championship. The Raiders' offense took the field first. LaMonica gave the ball off, and Packers linebacker Ray Nitschke burst through the gap, making a terrific tackle for a solid loss on the first play from scrimmage. Nitschke continued to make tremendous plays throughout the afternoon. In what would become his final game, place kicker Don Chandler opened the scoring, kicking his first of 4 field goals and 3 extra points in the process, and out-kicking Oakland's George Blanda. Boyd Doler scored a 62-yard receiving touchdown that slightly resembled one of Max McGee's scores from a year earlier. Last year's hero McGee had replaced Doler. In an ironic twist, Doler scores the touchdown he could have from a year ago as McGee played in his final professional football game, finishing with 1 reception for 35 yards. In a 9-point, 2-score game, the Raiders played tough and hung in the contest. At the half, it was the Packers 16, the Raiders 7. In a famous quote, the Packers guard and future Hall of Famer Jerry Kramer said to his teammates, "Let's play the last 30 minutes for the old man," referring to his head coach. Perhaps a rhetorical statement, as if Vince Lombardi's players wouldn't die for him on the field of battle. Halftime entertainment included, for the second year in a row, the Grambling State University Marching Band. The Green Bay Packers enforced their dominance further in the second half, continuing to rush behind future Hall of Fame offensive linemen Jerry Kramer and Forrest Gregg. Ben Wilson's 17 carries for 62 yards led the way. Not far behind was Donnie Anderson's 14 rushes for 48 yards and a touchdown. Bart Starr even scampered for 14 of his own. The Oakland Raiders quarterback Darryl LaMonica struggled, completing well less than 50% of his passes, going 15 of 34 for 208 yards and 2 touchdown passes, and one devastating interception that put the game out of reach. LaMonica zipped a pass up the right side of the field intended for Fred Biletnikoff, but only found future Hall of Fame defensive back Herb Adderley, who intercepted the ball and returned it all the way for a Packer touchdown. Despite the Raiders adding a touchdown to the score sheet, and despite future Hall of Fame quarterback and game MVP Bart Starr leaving the contest with an injury to his throwing hand's thumb, the NFL's Green Bay Packers defeated the AFL's Oakland Raiders handily, with a final score of 33-14. Vince Lombardi, in what was in fact his final coached game, retiring just 3 weeks later, won his 9th straight playoff game, which culminated in his 2nd straight AFL-NFL World Championship victory, retroactively named Super Bowl II. In some of the most iconic images in all of Super Bowl history, the Green Bay Packers carried their legendary coach off the field for the final time. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe below and hit the notification bell so you can be notified when new Super Bowl videos come out. Thanks a lot. On December 29, 1968, at Shea Stadium in Queens, New York, the 11-3 New York Jets won a close contest against the reigning AFL champs, the 12-2 Oakland Raiders, by a score of 27-23. On the same day, the 13-1 Baltimore Colts traveled to Cleveland Municipal Stadium in Ohio and absolutely dismantled the 10-4 Cleveland Browns, who were the only team that had beat them during the regular season. The victors of the contest would meet one another in the 3rd annual AFL-NFL World Championship game, and for the first time the game would be classified as the Super Bowl. Super Bowl III, January 12, 1969. The time, 3:05 Eastern. For the 2nd straight season, the game was hosted by Miami, Florida's Orange Bowl. On a 73-degree windy day under an overcast sky, with 75,389 in attendance, the game pitted the Baltimore Colts, the champions of the NFL, and the then still believed superior league, against the AFL champs, the New York Jets, an 18-point underdog. The game was broadcast solely by NBC, charging $55,000 for a 30-second commercial. With future Hall of Fame quarterback Johnny Unitas of the Baltimore Colts injured for the entirety of the regular season, the Colts had looked to quarterback Earl Morrall, who played fantastic in relief and won the NFL regular season MVP. Even with Johnny Unitas, a 3-time NFL MVP, healthy and cleared to play, Colts head coach Don Shula stuck with Morrall as the starter for the Super Bowl contest. The New York Jets, on the other hand, ironically led by head coach Weebu Bank, formerly a winner of 2 NFL titles with the Colts in 1958 and 1959, who was later fired after a poor 7-7 season following 1962, was poised for revenge on the team that dismissed him so quickly after his tremendous success previously. In an infamous quote at the Touchdown Club in Miami, New York Jet quarterback Joe Namath guaranteed a Jet victory just 3 days before the big game. A combination of both leagues' officials officiated the contest, but was led by NFL head referee Tom Bell. There was a lot at stake. The Colts were led by 2 dynamic quarterbacks that had 4 NFL regular season MVPs between them. The Colts boasted the 2nd-ranked offense in points scored and top-ranked defense in points allowed, with 144, tying the then record. With 4 elite defensive backs who combined had an incredible 22 interceptions during the regular season and had dominated an NFL league unfamiliar with the zone defense. Many believe the Baltimore Colts were the greatest team ever assembled. The game was a foregone conclusion, but The Jets quarterback guaranteed victory in the third annual AFL-NFL World Championship game. We're going to win the game. I guarantee it. Super Bowl III. The Jets received the football, but ultimately punted on their first possession. On the Colts' ensuing drive, they missed a field goal. Joe Namath recognized the Colts' defense based on where certain players were lined up, and was able to make the play calls and necessary adjustments at the line of scrimmage. If the Colts stacked on one side of the ball, the Jets ran the opposite way, and vice versa. If the Colts blitzed Namath, he beat them with quick passes. Future Hall of Fame receiver Don Maynard was nursing a pulled hamstring. The Colts rolled coverage his way, unaware of the injury, and Maynard ultimately became the game's biggest decoy, being targeted 5 times for 0 receptions. Meanwhile, this allowed George Sawyer Jr. to beat his soft coverage, going for 8 catches, 133 yards on 12 targets. Early in the second quarter, Earl Morrall began to unravel, throwing his first of 3 red zone interceptions. This one a tip ball that was picked in the end zone. The turnover resulted in a jet drive capped off by a Matt Snell touchdown run. For the first time in the history of the Super Bowl, the AFL had the lead. As halftime approached, the Colts found themselves driving the field, but Morrall threw another interception at the Jets' 2-yard line. After a jet punt, the Colts ran a trick play, a flea flicker that wound up in a 3rd interception. If there was ever a Colts sailboat, the wind was taken out of it here. The halftime score was the Jets 7, the Colts 0. The halftime entertainment included the Florida A&M University Band. Matt Snell rushed for over 4 yards a carry and kept the Colts off the field by carrying the football 30 times for 121 yards in the game and the lone second quarter touchdown for the Jets. He also added 4 receptions for 40 yards. 2 third quarter field goals improved the lead to 13-0 for the New York Jets. By late in the third quarter, Earl Morrall's ghastly 71-yard, 3-interception, and 9.3 quarterback rating performance was replaced by 3-time league MVP and future Hall of Fame quarterback Johnny Unitas. However, the quarterback went 3 and out on his first drive. The Jets were able to increase their lead to 16 before Unitas threw an interception of his own, a 4th interception for the Jets defense, all coming when the Colts were poised to score, made the most significant impact on the game. Johnny Unitas finished 11 of 24 for 110 yards and an interception. For the Colts, it was too little, too late. Tom Matty ran for 116 yards, but those numbers were skewed as one early game carry was for 58 yards alone. And future Hall of Fame Baltimore Colt tight end John Mackey was rendered ineffective. Jerry Hill scored the only Colt touchdown late in the contest. Despite Snell and Sawyer Jr. both having magnificent performances, the New York Jets were ultimately led by quarterback Joe Namath. Aided by his familiarity of AFL zone coverage defenses, he went 17 of 28 for 206 yards on the day. Namath's play calls, game management, and decision-making led him to be named the first touchdown-less Super Bowl MVP, who didn't throw a single pass in the fourth quarter, in quite possibly the most historically important American football game ever played. The New York Jets proved to the world that they were not an inferior team, and they proved that the AFL was not an inferior league. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe below and hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified every time a new Super Bowl video comes out. Thanks a lot. On January 4th, 1970, at the Metropolitan Stadium in Bloomington, Minnesota, the 12-2 Minnesota Vikings defeated the 10-3-1 Cleveland Browns easily, 27-7, in the 1969 NFL Championship game. On the same day, at the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, the 11-3 Kansas City Chiefs defeated the 12-1 Oakland Raiders by a score of 17-7 in the last ever AFL League game. The victors would meet in the 4th annual and very last AFL-NFL Championship game, coined the Super Bowl. Super Bowl IV, January 11th, 1970. The time, 2:40 Central. And for the first time, the location was Tulane Stadium in New Orleans, Louisiana. On a 61-degree day, after a pre-game tornado watch, the game was played under an overcast sky with 80,562 in attendance. The game pitted the NFL champion and the then still believed superior league, despite losing to the AFL a year ago, the Minnesota Vikings, against the 13-point underdog, the Kansas City Chiefs. The game was broadcast solely by CBS, charging $78,000 for a 30-second commercial. The Kansas City Chiefs had been here before, competing in their second Super Bowl, this time as the first ever wildcard team to make it to the big game. Their leadership was ultimately the same as Super Bowl I. Innovative head coach Hank Stram and quarterback Len Dawson, no stranger to the big game. The Minnesota Vikings, known for a bone-crushing defense led by a mean defensive line nicknamed the Purple People Eaters, and head coach former player Bud Grant. The Vikings were expected to destroy the Chiefs. A combination of both leagues' officials officiated the contest, but was led by AFL head referee John McDonough. There was a lot at stake. The Minnesota Vikings were looking to cement the NFL's legacy as the superior league and the final AFL-NFL World Championship game. Led by future Hall of Famers on defense, including Alan Page at defensive tackle and Paul Krause in the secondary, who would go on to set the all-time league interception record with 81. The Kansas City Chiefs boasted 7 future Hall of Famers in their starting lineup, with 6 on defense, including the fantastic linebacker tandem of Bobby Bell and Willie Lanier. The offense was led by quarterback Len Dawson, who was considered one of, if not the top quarterbacks, in the AFL. His success, however, was brushed off as playing in an inferior league, an opinion that could change with an AFL win in Super Bowl IV. Super Bowl IV. The Vikings started with the football and quarterback Joe Kapp started hot, but fizzled out rather quickly. After a punt, the Chiefs completed an 8-play, 42-yard drive with a Jan Stenerud 48-yard field goal, the longest in Super Bowl history, a record which would hold for 24 years until Super Bowl 28. The first Norwegian-born American football player and one of the first soccer-style kickers kicking with the inside of his foot rather than the straight-on method, Stenerud and his 3 field goals to begin the contest and later 2 extra points marked the kicker as one of the game's most important players. With the Chiefs leading 6-0, Len Dawson was picked off by all-time interception king Paul Krause. The turnover, however, didn't amount to anything productive for the Vikings, and the Chiefs shortly made the score 9-0. On the ensuing kickoff, the Vikings fumbled and the Chiefs recovered. A few plays later, the stage was set for the game's most famous play, a 5-yard Mike Garrett touchdown run, the 65 toss power trap. For the first time in Super Bowl history, a head coach, Hank Stram of the Kansas City Chiefs, was mic'd up via NFL Films.
65 toss power trap, yeah!
Coach Stram acted as his team's offensive coordinator and game-planned run traps and draw plays against a very aggressive Viking defensive line. Garrett ended the game as the leading rusher for the contest with 11 carries for 39 yards and a Kansas City Chief touchdown. On the flip side of the football, the Vikings' undersized offensive line struggled against the larger Kansas City Chief defensive line, and were only able to rush for a team total of 67 yards in the game, 24 yards in the first half, and were unable to convert on 3rd down, going 0 for 5 to begin the contest. The score at halftime was 16-0, Chiefs. The halftime entertainment included a reenactment of the Battle of New Orleans. The Vikings had a productive 10-play, 69-yard drive early in the 3rd quarter, which resulted in a 4-yard Dave Osborne rushing touchdown, making the score 16-7. Joe Kapp went 16 of 25 for 183 yards in the game and had 2 costly interceptions. The Vikings' fantastic run game was completely shut down by the stingy Chief defense. Vikings wide receiver John Henderson caught 7 balls for 111 yards in the contest, but it wasn't enough. On their next possession, the Chiefs stormed back and scored on a Len Dawson 46-yard pass to Otis Taylor. The score would cement the game for the Chiefs. The Chiefs' first Super Bowl victory, 23-7, behind the crafty head coach Hank Stram, the soccer-style kicker, the future Hall of Fame defense, and ultimately the game's MVP, quarterback Len Dawson. Dawson went 12 of 17 for 142 yards and a touchdown, with one interception as well. He was the fourth straight quarterback to win the game's MVP. The Kansas City Chiefs shocked the world and tied the all-time series 2-2, going into the AFL-NFL merger. The AFL would become the American Football Conference, the AFC, and the NFL would become the NFC, the National Football Conference. The two conferences would play under the National Football League, the NFL.